here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off with a magic moment. Do you want me to go through what we just did a moment ago and again, just to describe it, or are you kind of sure? Okay, fine. I'll describe the magic moment again in a second. Let me just give you the whole process in a minute. Number one, find a reason to introduce the magic moment. Of course, we had a lovely, long, in-depth conversation before we started the magic moment. And then something is casual saying, oh, you know what, that reminds me of something. Let me show you this. So you just bring it in casually in the conversation. And if you want to pretend you had a conversation first, that's fine by me. So you just bring in the magic moment. Number two, it's very important at the end of the magic moment, when something has happened, which is kind of interesting, it's emotionally stimulating. Remember, the amygdala gets triggered by something novel, something unusual, something unexpected. Well, a magic moment is that. Would it be fair to say that you felt your amygdala being triggered? In the sense it was novel, it was a little different, it was unusual? Or where's the, who came up? There you go, there you go. Right? So you felt like, wow, what is that? And especially because, you know, when you went to turn around, normally, just so you know, when people turn, they'll go to about 6, maybe 8 or 7 o'clock. That's about as far as they go. When you went to 9, I went, well, I hope he's double jointed. Otherwise, I'm going to be embarrassed. But at the end of that, there's that emotion that's running around, but it has nowhere to go. There's no purpose or point it can come down on. Sometimes people automatically latch onto a point. So they'll sometimes ask like, oh wow, is that how goals work? Or is that why when people believe themselves it'll work and all that sort of stuff? But it's relatively rare. You have to give them a meaning. You have to draw it all into a point for them. And your point really should be related with whatever kind of influence you want to create with people. In other words, it's creating a frame or a suggestion of some sort. We'll talk about frames more tomorrow, I believe. Make sense? So you have to make a point. The point I was making here is the power of the mind. I just like that because it fits my job pretty nicely, right? But it really can be anything. It can be about, you know, how your corporation is different to other people's corporations. It could be about why it's important to learn history or than not, right? Why it's important to overcome points, stuff like that. The thing about magic moments, though, the magic moments should somehow be able to be framed in terms or in reference to whatever point you're trying to make, right? So for example, the pointing game we just played, if I was trying to convince a bunch of pupils that history is important to learn, how do they fit? How does pointing around fit history? I may have to tweak it. For example, I said, look, imagine that in front of you is 12, that you know, is the 12th century, the 13th century, you know, and so on. By the time you get to the 20th century, which is, you know, or the 21st century, which is 9 o'clock, then you come back again and then go past. Let's see if we can predict the future, right? And then we just talk about how, you know, you can imagine how the whole story gets evolved now, right? So now you're going through the centuries all the way up to the present day, which of course is the 21st century, that's 9 o'clock. And now, you know, as a lot of people realize, is the future is always built on the past. So keep going. Keep going, see if you can tell the future, right? And then when they actually do it, and they actually go past 21st century, past 9 o'clock into the future, they go, oh, wow, I've got to study history. Now, notice how the association, the link, is not logical, right? Being able to point has nothing to do with predicting the future or even learning history. But because your story is smooth, and because the experience is emotive, in other words, has emotions attached, and it's engaging, those three ideas somehow get associated, get collected at the unconscious level, and they will accept the idea. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you see again how magic moments have a lot of scope? It's just you have to bring it down to a point, and the point has to fit the context that you're in. In other words, the message you're trying to provide. Make sense? At this point, you have an opportunity for trance. So the first thing I want you to do at this point is what we call the hypnotic gaze. Do you recall on day one when you put your hands on someone's shoulders and stared into their eyes, and you watched for that moment when their eyes stopped shifting, when it sort of settled down and the focus locked in? Did you all notice that? Right? As you're doing your instant inductions now, you should still be looking for that because that's still part of the instant inductions. You're going to do the same thing, only this time it will be conversational. right? They've just had an amazing experience, which means you can arrest their attention. So what is your name, just so I can... Johnny. Do you remember when Johnny was up here a moment ago, and he just went way past 9 o'clock? He had an extra couple of inches on top of that. He went to maybe 10, 11, something like that. Do you recall how at the end of it, he was like, wow. And what we do, I just put one hand on his shoulder. I like touch because it arrests attention as well. And I locked eye contact with him, and I just started speaking. Right? Did you see that? So really, it's like shall we say, a more socially acceptable or conversational version of look into my eyes and do not look away. I'm not actually saying it, but kind of my attitude is still there. Make sense? Now, it's important that you're doing this whole stuff with your inner smile, your H+. Why? Because normally, when people stare at each other, especially males staring at other males, right? Or then again, males staring at females might be interpreted again in different ways. So, do you see where I'm going with this? You have to set the context with your own emotional state as well. And at that point, you have the perfect context for trance. Do you have attention? Yes? Yes? Do you have a bypass of the critical factor? Well, the answer is yes. You have a strong emotional event, which is already starting to bypass the critical factor. You're arresting their attention with eye contact. Eye contact is, as a rule, if it's prolonged, makes people a little uncomfortable, and that tends to derail the critical factor. So you're pretty much there. You can slip straight into stimulating the unconscious mind. How did I start doing that with Johnny? Well, we did exactly what we've been doing all day today, wasn't it? Conscious-unconscious dissociation, a little pacing and leading, and if I should need it, a revivification. Right? Only this time, I'm not going to be down on one of these like, and now, Johnny, you can remember. Right? Because it doesn't fit the context I've created. I can do it more conversationally, though. I can still change my tone, but it'll be much more, it'll be a softer change, it'll be a subtler change, because it'll fit the context more. Right? And you all had a demonstration of what I meant by that. Do you want another demo, just so you can see it? Can I have a volunteer, please?